New cattle and beef trade information has been released recently, and joining us now to talk about is Derrell Peel, our livestock marketing specialist. And Derrell, why don't we start out just kind of taking a look at the import picture?
You know, we've got record high cattle and beef prices in the U.S., and that impacts the trade flows as well. On the import side, we are seeing some increase in imports. Year to date, we're up about 6%. Most of that increase is from Australia. Partly because Australia has been experiencing a drought and liquidation of cattle. That's increased their beef output in the short run, but it means there'll be less at some point later on when they recover from the drought. We've also seen some increase in beef imports from Canada. However, we're down from a couple of major sources. New Zealand is down about 5%.
And then how is the export picture shaping up?
You know, the export picture is holding up really well. Again, we have record high prices. We sort of expected that might cause a little bit of decrease in beef exports. So far this year, we're up, about 7% for the year to date, actually up more sharply than that in the most recent monthly data. So we've got exports increasing to Mexico, to Japan somewhat, but we've got reduced exports to Canada, and exports to South Korea are also up. So we're doing pretty well in most of those markets.
And then in terms of the live cattle market, what's the situation there?
You know, again, we've got extremely tight feeder supplies in the U.S., record high prices. That pulls in cattle from wherever it can, which is primarily Canada and Mexico. We are seeing increased imports there. But again, numbers are relatively tight in both of those countries, particularly Mexico. And so I expect to see, those exports or those imports of cattle probably taper off a little bit as we move through the year.
And you mentioned Mexico. You just returned from a trip and got to observe a few things. What's the situation there?
You know, the Mexican beef and cattle industry has been extremely dynamic in the more than 20 years I've been going down there. Most recently, there's been a significant increase in recent years in their feedlot production capacity, in their beef packing capacity. Mexico has emerged as a rather significant global player with potential to continue growing. As I mentioned, they've emerged as the number 4 source of beef imports in the last few years. So that's been a big change, continues to grow. But it also has an impact on the way they're using their cattle, the available supplies. They've gone through a drought much like we have, and so their cattle numbers are extremely tight right now.
And then in terms of future import-export and relationships with Mexico, what do you see happening there?
Well, you know, there's 3 dimensions of the trade now. We have a pretty well-integrated market with Mexico. So in terms of the cattle imports that we've historically gotten from Mexico, because of the tight numbers in the short run and because of increased domestic demand longer term, I think we'll probably see less cattle come from Mexico to the U.S. as feeder cattle in the future. On the beef export side, again, we're seeing an increase now last year and so far this year after about a 5-year slide in that. Beef production is limited in Mexico because of tight numbers there, and so I expect to see fairly strong beef exports to Mexico. The last bit of that is the imports from Mexico, which have grown dramatically in the last 5 years until last year. They're down again, and again, because of limited production in Mexico, because of domestic demand, and because of other export market opportunities they have, we probably will see a more moderate or modest pace of growth in the future in terms of the imports of U.S. or Mexican beef in the U.S.
Okay, good information. Thanks a lot, Derrell Peel, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.